Hey, welcome to Quick Take. I'm your co-host, Susie, along with my co-host, James.
I
Is
also
that
am a
right?
co-host. I'm the co-host.
Coco. We'll just call you Coco today.
That's
And
fine.
and we have a third person with us today, Amy Bell. Amy, welcome.
Hi, everybody. Both co-hosts. Both of you.
Coco.
Coco, good morning.
Coco.
Amy and I have worked together for a long time, James. And Amy, I am so proud to say I say proud, but she has had a really extensive career as an executive in the media, on the operator side, on the programmer side, and she has kind of seen it all. What would you add to that, Amy?
I think that's good. It's an industry that I just can't seem to leave, nor do I really want to. So it's great.
So we want to talk today about leadership and specifically like communication and how you have to adjust that as you go up in ranks and through your journey as an executive.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I was reflecting on this the other day when we were talking about just some kind of how you show up with these different audiences. And I remember early in my career, it was like everything you could do and show how smart you were to write these lengthy memos. And then they turned into lengthy emails, and words mattered, and words still matter, but brevity, I think, has become really something that if you can hone and distill your point that still shows that you know your stuff, but you can be quick about it and you can get to the point about it. There's great appreciation for that. We're all really busy. Nobody has time to read it. I mean, when you guys get those emails that are super long and you're like, oh, this feels like a chore. You don't want your communications to feel like a chore. And so that is certainly a big shift that I've made over the years, that you go from more words means smarter, better. I must know my stuff, to get to the point, keep it simple, and, get to the close, in other words.
Yeah, I think that's a great observation, and I find that when I'm coaching folks, so often I remind them that this particular communication moment, this opportunity having to speak with this individual or the audience, is not necessarily the time for you to prove your knowledge,
Yeah.
right? And so often, especially technology people that I work with mostly, when they get nervous, they tend to kind of go to their comfort zone, which is the technical details, just to get into the weeds. And I have to remind them, now is not the time for that. If this is an interrogation, and yes, you are proving your knowledge, or an interview, that's one thing. But typically, you're trying to get a point across, or trying to give somebody some sort of a call to action. Brevity, succinctness, and staying on topic is so critical to getting people's mind share.
Yeah, brevity equals clarity in my mind.
Yeah.
How do you know you're being at the level at the appropriate at the level you're at, or in which communications? Like, what tips would you give to people to kind of zoom themselves out to say, do I need to adjust this? What would you both say?
For me, I think it's remember your audience and kind of flip the script. It's like, what do you need them to know? What do you want really to be the strongest point? And put yourself in their shoes. Again, I think, James, you said it. They don't need a full education, nor do they want it. And so they really just need to know either an answer to the question as succinctly as you can get it to them. But if they're coming at it with a view of really not knowing, and I think you can take some cues, whether it's via email, they'll ask you for more if they need more, and so I think you start kind of with just the facts, and then offer to expand if necessary.
Yeah, I like that. To build on that, I often remind people that we so often go into meetings and communication opportunities with a scarcity mindset, where we believe we are going to get one shot to get every piece of information we have across the table. And that's rarely the case. Most of us don't work in environments where we're putting together a 14-page 3-ring binder of information. And so it's a dialogue. And if you can be more succinct, you're going to be more influential. And I think that's really important, that you go into it with that scarcity mindset, a bias front and center.
Scarcity mindset, but being prepared if you need to.
Absolutely. Right.
Yeah.
But realize that so often our knee jerk is just to get it all on one memo. Well, they
Yeah.
might ask this question, so I'm going to
Yes.
add 3 more paragraphs.
Yes.
Right? That's not that doesn't that deludes and dilutes your message.
Mhm. It made
Yeah.
me think about in negotiation, and what Amy said was anticipate the mindset of the
Mhm.
person that you're writing it to. What do they need to know? And is considering the interests of the other party before a negotiation measurably increases your outcome because you've thought about it from their side. And then what you said, James, to me was be aware in the moment of what's going on around you. Don't
So,
get
so true.
so locked into your presentation or what you want to say that you're not adapting to the room.
Yeah. You
I
know what I
think a
like
big
to
tip
uh,
too is walking into if you're especially if you're doing some sort of a presentation, it's different. It's a different feel too. Like I'm big on like reading the room, as you say. Like you walk in, what's the vibe? How are things kind of set up, and what's their appetite for banter versus just the facts
mm,
and diving in. And so I think as much as you can read, whether it's a virtual room or a room that you're walking into, I think that's important. And if you're presenting, and this is a bit more of a formal kind of, whether it's a PowerPoint or whatever tool you're using to present from, I think just setting the stage and say, hey, this is what I think you want to hear from me today. This is what I'm going to talk about. Am I missing anything? Because I want to make sure I'm using the best use of your time, and setting it up that way, I think really helps, and then you're not as caught off guard because you feel like you're in the driver's seat more than them, which I think is a cool place to be when you might feel like you're a bit intimidated by the room itself.
yeah, I love that so much, and that so often people will come in to present to me or a leadership team, and they are nervous, and they go into the presentation as if it is a high school dissertation,
Mhm.
and they go slide 1, welcome, thank you for coming, my name is James and I'm here to tell you about X today. And that sets a pallor over the room, and rarely is that the kind of meeting you're in. And and to create more of a conversation, to break the ice, if you will, just saying, before I begin, what are you guys hoping to get out of this, so I can make sure I
Yeah.
get to that? The best presentations I've ever given is where you start on slide 12,
Yeah.
right?
I
Because
think
you
that
go right
that's
to the meat.
so true. Very true. Very true.
Yeah.
Jump around if you need to. And also be really mindful. Like they say that if you don't walk in with this is what I want you to know. Like that's what I'm reiterating what you said. Don't go in with the laminated version and then we're gonna have this is the plan. But when you get people's buy-in, even asking that question, people are 5 times more likely to be all in at the end.
Right.
So if you can think about that being really important, how do you get that adjustment to whatever the dialogue is? When you go in with that expectation of yourself, you're more likely to be really open to that.
I love that laminated version.
Yeah.
I'm going to use it, Susie, and I'll try and give you credit when I do.
I
But
think
I,
it actually came from James, but
James, the co-host, the perfect co-host. Yeah, I also think that again gives you a sense of relief and not feeling you're less likely to be thrown off if you're not so rigid about what you
Mhm.
need to do. If you
Right.
can start from anywhere, and if you're not comfortable with that, practice it. Just
Mhm.
practice it. There's no shame in like preparing and
Oh my gosh, none.
standing in front of a mirror if you need to, or jumping in here or there and anticipating that. In fact, I think that's really good if you can do that. But
Yeah.
the non-laminated version is what I think the majority of us spend our time working on every day. There's no exact way to do something,
Yeah.
generally speaking. So I think that if you can remain flexible and be a bit quick on your feet, and being quick on your feet doesn't mean you always have to have the answer, but it's being able to kind of roll with the questions. So I love the laminated version. I love it.
If I could take it up a level too, one of the things I think, our listeners would love to hear about is not so much in the particular presentation, but how do you learn about your style, and how do you look watch others and how they present and how they communicate, to identify what is the best way to do so in your organization, what is the best practice, what are the cultural norms
Interesting.
around communication. Because certainly, one meeting can be very casual and one meeting can be another. But as an individual trying to grow their skill set and become a better communicator, well, maybe we could talk a little bit about the things you can do over time to observe and learn about how you can get better.
Yeah, for it's such a cliche, the whole idea of you gotta listen and,
Mhm.
communicating is as much about talking as it is it's listening. I think that's probably one of the things that has helped me become successful is being a chameleon and going in and as much as you can, even when you're not there to contribute in a super meaningful way, like sitting back, reading the room, being that fly on the wall kind of and just picking up on little things in the
Mhm.
room, I think are really, really key. And so as much as you can do that or understand kind of a personal style thing about people, I think there are cues there that are nonverbal all over the place, especially when you're walking into a boardroom or an executive room. No
Sure,
question.
absolutely.
So
Mhm, mhm.
shut the mouth, open the ears, watch people, and that's gonna be really, really telling if you can read people.
Mhm.
Yeah, one of the things that I like to think about is um, who are the people that around or listening to that make it are very good communicators, are influencing and connecting with the audience, whoever it is. And it's typically not one meeting, like, gosh, that she is amazing at that. And how is she doing that? And she's doing X, Y, and Z. And I like to, as you described, look at the tips, read the room, read those skills that that individual is showing, and learn from them. Because the odds are pretty good that they don't know what they're doing either. And if you were to have asked them, well, how do you do that? They were like, I don't know. I just do it. But you can learn that, hey, you know what? They stop a lot. They listen differently. They pause. There was a really a great engineer that I worked with at Comcast. That he was one of the most well-respected guys, and every time he spoke, he would start off by saying, "Well, when I think about it," and there was a pause, and you could hear a pin drop because when he spoke, people wanted to hear what he had to say. But he had curated this style to create that sense of listening, and those are the kind of things that I really love to observe and try to incorporate in my day to day.
So, do you
Yeah.
guys think then, so taking what you're saying about being an observer of what's going on of the culture, really being mindful of who is the audience that I'm communicating to, whether whatever forum it is, a meeting, an email, and what do they need to know? And then being really brief about how you communicate. Like, are those the things that are those the takeaways?
Yeah, I for me, I think so. And I think just really trying to use your intuition as you walk in and
Mhm.
your gut's going to tell you something for a reason, and sometimes I mean I've had this happen where I've made the mistake and come at it a bit too casually,
Mm,
and
yeah.
some people feel like casual can mean not formal or not serious enough, and I'm one of those people who uses comedy to break, or humor to kind of break uncomfortable situations. And that always hasn't served me well. So I think that you might have to tiptoe in a little bit and then test the waters. And sometimes you're going to swim and sometimes you're going to sink. And that's okay because you're going to learn from it, and be able to navigate that differently. And that the group of people is going to be different at it too. I mean, there's certainly a tone that you can feel, but maybe it's when you're answering a question to somebody that you're getting that, hey, I need to be a bit more formal, a bit more business like, a bit more structured in this answer versus the answer that I'm giving somebody who might be a little bit more laid back about it and just want, a little bit more color in the response.
Well, what you were talking about with humor is something that I pretend that I'm funny. I don't know that I actually am. But I have also done the same thing, which has gone in with a too casual of approach.
Mhm.
And I think the advice that I've given people on that, it's funny. I saw J.W. Marriott speak once,
Mm.
many, many years ago. I think he was 250 years old and I was 19. Um, but his advice was always overdress, one layer up, level up from where you're going. I remember that. I'm not sure if I 100% agree. I think wearing a tuxedo to a semi-formal event is a little weird. But what I did take away from that is you never know what level things are going to be at, and always aim higher. And I think when it comes to speaking and communications, what I have found is if I think I can be funny, I'm not going to be funny up front. I'm going
Yeah.
to take a more measured tone,
Mhm.
and so I can always land where it needs to be based on what the feel of the room is. If you go in and you drop a funny joke or you say something quirky and that isn't the feed the mood or the spirit of the conversation, it can really undermine your ability to influence and get your message across. So while I respect that and I love it and it's my style too, my advice is always just start high and work your way down.
Yeah. It's really funny. I way into my career, I was talking to this guy. He was a VP level, and we were just having a one-on-one conversation, and I was listening to him. And I was showing him a lot of nonverbals. I was going, uh-huh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Because to me, that is like, I'm showing you I'm really
Mhm.
engaged.
Mhm.
And at one point he's paused and he stopped and he goes, "What is this?" He like put his hands down. He goes, "What is this? Uh-huh, uh-huh. What are you doing? Are you agreeing with me? Are you trying to distract me?" Like he was so
Wow.
frustrated with me. And I was like, that was the first time in my career, more
I've
than,
never
that
heard of
he
anything like
said
that.
to me.
Yeah,
And I thought that was super interesting. I was so grateful to him for doing that because it made me realize that my approach is not always the right approach for the person on the other side, whether
sure.
it's humor or whether it's nonverbals, whether it's how you're going too fast, you're going too slow. And what you guys keep saying that's really keeps coming back to me is as you go up, like, as you're moving into executive role, you need to, like, be thoughtful about all these things and be thinking and preparing, and then you always need to adjust in the situation
Hmm, hmm.
and
Mhm.
be open to that and prepare enough. I guess one question I wanna ask you guys is, how do you prepare for the worst case scenario? Like, what about those tough questions or if it goes somewhere so that you do have the mindset in the moment to make that adjustment?
That's a good question. I think some of that is a little bit of what we touched on is know your story from all different ways. Like start the chapter on chapter 12 versus chapter 1. And so I think the more comfortable you can be, the more able you're going to be able to kind of go with the curveball for sure. I think that what I've also kind of learned is in some cases, if you don't have the data, don't make it up.
Oh, for sure.
If
Totally
you
agree.
don't know for sure, you can say, "Let me get back to you. I wanna make sure I'm giving you the exact, information or the correct," and asking for that is certainly something that I think shows respect because you're respecting them enough not to just kind of try and, throw them something that just gets them to move on or gets you in more trouble because now you're like, "Uh-oh, I've given them a data point that I'm not really sure about," or I've given them a fact that maybe I don't know it's the right fact for this particular situation. So I think that can get us into trouble, like trying to answer a hard question that we don't really fully have the answer to. If you need to phone a friend, outside of the meeting or get back to them, I think that's acceptable. I really do.
I agree, and I always suggest that to my staff. Um, but I have also said and I've also said don't get defensive,
Yeah.
and let me tell you why. Because I have been in meetings where I have been asked a question, and I have politely and admitted I don't have that information, and said let me get back to you. And the response was, "You are the CTO. You should have that
Mm,
answer. Why don't you have that answer? That is something you should have." And in that particular story, that it was true. I should have had that information, um, and there was no way around it. But
yeah.
avoiding being defensive,
Yeah.
acknowledging it was a shortcoming, diffuse the situation rather than arguing whether I should have that data or saying, "Well, that's actually an accounting thing," and blah blah blah. And then the banjos are playing and the wheels are coming off the wagon and it's all over. But I think at the end of the day, in those situations, yeah, never make something up. Always, admit, hope or acknowledge that you don't have the information. You can get it, but also be prepared for the worst, which is that answer is not good enough.
Well, and I think accountability is huge.
Yeah.
Like that accountability equals credibility,
Hmm.
and so I think that
100%. I love that.
that is like I don't know it. I should know it, but let me get back to you. And
Hmm.
if you need
Hmm.
any more info on this, I can either put you in contact with the right person, or let me just chase that down for you. I just think if you can be accountable, good and
Uh-huh.
bad, it's and not throwing others under the bus, even though it might be their shortcoming or
Yeah.
it might
Yeah. Yeah.
really
Yeah.
be that. Say, you know what, I don't have that. We can get it for you. We'll rally the team and or yeah, we missed the mark as a team and
Yep.
and collectively we'll do better and try and guide this a different way next time. You know.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So, James, I'm going to give you the task of pulling out 3 takeaways from today. And so I'm giving you like a couple seconds
Sure,
to
I can do it.
Okay.
I'm always got part of my brain keeping tally here. So,
Okay.
I'm going to go in reverse order. I love that accountability builds trust. So when you're communicating, make sure that you're clear and concise and having honesty in what information you have and what you don't. Second, do the best you can to read and communicate at the level that the room or the audience is prepared to
Mhm.
hear. Avoid too much detail. Brevity is clarity, and ensure that your audience is aware or is on board with the communication. And then I think one of my favorite ones that came up was really check in with your audience before you begin. Really evaluate the situation, ask them what they're hoping to get out of the conversation, and many times you can focus on something that perhaps wasn't you didn't appreciate being the key. So creating that upfront rapport, that having that initial dialogue can really juice your presentation and help you make a difference.
How'd he do, Amy?
He did great. He's a
Oh,
keeper.
he's a keeper. He's a keeper. Amy, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a really great conversation.
My
Um,
pleasure. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks so
Thanks for
much.
having me.